Hi, I'm Michael Collins Piper, coming to you from the Washington, D.C. headquarters of American Free Press newspaper. If you're not familiar with American Free Press, I would suggest you check it out on the internet at americanfreepress.net. I'm here today to talk to you about a very controversial subject, a very controversial individual, and as you might have guessed by taking a look at that special report from American Free Press that you can see over my shoulder, the subject is Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin is a very interesting individual, ladies and gentlemen, and there is much reported about Sarah Palin in the mass media, both positive and negative. However, I have detected that both Sarah Palin's conservative supporters and her liberal critics have ignored some of the most pertinent and relevant data about Sarah Palin that does indeed point toward the origin of her political agenda and just precisely what she does represent in American politics today. I'm going to be right up front and tell you that this special report on Sarah Palin, which I have prepared for American Free Press, the power behind Sarah Palin, is a critique, a very harsh critique of Sarah Palin, and this is critical to understand, folks. You're not going to find in this report on Sarah Palin the standard criticisms of the former Alaska governor that you see from the liberals in the mass media. No, quite the contrary, folks. I think the liberals in the mass media who are spending so much time criticizing Sarah Palin for her hairstyle and for Troopergate and for her treatment of her husband and her treatment of her children and her get-rich-quick schemes being concocted through Fox News and the Rupert Murdoch media empire. These liberal criticisms of Sarah Palin, coupled with occasional critiques of her views on political issues, far distract us from the reality of who Sarah Palin really is in terms of what she represents in the American political arena today. The liberal critics of Sarah Palin spend a lot of time making fun of her and raising questions about her knowledge about political events and political issues. But folks, I'm here to tell you, Sarah Palin is no dummy. Sarah Palin is no airhead. Her liberal critics might want to make her appear to be so. No, the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that Sarah Palin is far from what she is generally perceived to be by both her admirers and her detractors. And the reason why you don't hear about this is because it cuts to the very core of real power politics in America today. Both Sarah's liberal critics and her conservative supporters perceive her to be some sort of grassroots populist. Her supporters call her a stateswoman, her critics call her a demagogue, but the fact is Sarah Palin has been propelled to the highest levels of the political arena in America today by some of the most powerful political and financial interests on the face of the planet. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to tell you that Sarah Palin, this Sarah Palin is hardly more than a shill. She's a front woman for some of the big money interests operating in the planet today. My report on Sarah Palin, the power behind Sarah Palin, demonstrates beyond any question that her political endeavors have been propelled farther than ever before, farther than she could have ever realized, by the very support from two major news publications, Newsweek magazine and the Washington Post daily newspaper here in our nation's capital, both owned by the same company, which has ties to the international power elite. Both Newsweek and the Washington Post have been critical in providing Sarah Palin important journalistic support that has made her rise. Just since the 2008 presidential election, where she was a vice presidential running mate on a Republican ticket, they have propelled her very far toward the Republican presidential nomination in 2012. Now, this confounds a lot of people because both the Washington Post and Newsweek are perceived to be liberal publications. hardly the type of publications that would be favorable towards a quote-unquote conservative candidate such as Sarah Palin. But the fact is, if you do a very careful content analysis of both the news coverage and the editorial coverage of Sarah Palin since the 2008 presidential election, you will see beyond any question that the Washington Post has effectively acted as a cheerleader on Sarah Palin's behalf. But the case of Newsweek magazine is even more provocative. Most recently, Newsweek, which incidentally was just sold by the Washington Post Company to Congresswoman Jane Harman and her billionaire husband, Sidney Harman. But needless to say, Newsweek, up until recently, was owned by the Washington Post Company. They featured Sarah Palin on the front cover, almost in a religious type photograph, something like an icon of the Virgin Mary, and they called her Saint Sarah, and they presented Sarah Palin as the new voice for conservative Christian women in America, and even more so, they implied that she's the leader of the new feminism in America, that there's an evolving feminism in America based on the agenda and concerns of American women, and that Sarah Palin is the new leader of American women. Yes, that's from the liberal Newsweek magazine, folks. And then if you turn into the pages of Newsweek, you see page after page after page touting Sarah Palin. Why? That's not the first time that Newsweek did that. Maybe you recall this particular issue of Newsweek, which featured a very provocative picture of Sarah Palin in running shorts, draped in the American flag. Now, when that was published, Sarah Palin and her supporters said, "Oh, that was terrible of Newsweek to run this picture of Mrs. Palin, that it was sexist," they said. Well, what they forgot to mention was that Sarah Palin, of course, posed for that picture. She posed for that picture for Runner's World magazine, and Newsweek just simply picked it up. Sarah Palin's a smart cookie, so to speak. She knows what she's doing. And I want to tell you something. If you look in that particular issue of Newsweek magazine, the one I just referenced here, if you look at the other illustrations in that magazine, it's very, very clear that Newsweek, the great liberal weekly, was providing a not-so-subtle boost for Sarah Palin, and, to be truthful about it, based on sex appeal. Now, Sarah Palin may proclaim that this is wrong, and this is this, and this is that, but, folks, everybody knows full well that any publicity is better than none at all, and when a news magazine features you on their front cover with an extended series of articles and pictures about you, they're building you up. And the more the liberal media has criticized Sarah Palin, the more it has energized her supporters. So here's the Washington Post Company, through Newsweek and their daily newspaper, possibly the most powerful newspaper in America, rivaling even the New York Times. We find them in their editorial columns and in their news stories promoting Sarah Palin. The Washington Post Company is owned by billionaire investor Warren Buffett, who's a major stockholder. Other major stockholders include many, many powerful international banking concerns with ties back to the Rothschild family in Europe, and of course the Meyer-Graham family, who are the ostensible owners of the Post Company, but which is in fact controlled by a diverse array of international banking interests. Hardly grassroots America. And yet these are the people that are lending their support to Sarah Palin. Not coincidentally, you also find that the Rupert Murdoch empire, Fox News, and the News Corporation are now personally bankrolling Sarah Palin, giving her a post as a commentator on that network, and providing her with all manner of favorable publicity. Well, of course, the Murdoch empire is ostensibly a conservative force, But in fact, if you look back at Rupert Murdoch's origins, the origins of his fortune, although he inherited a major media empire, largely based in Australia, through the support again of the Rothschild family, the Oppenheimers of South Africa, and other major financial interests, including the Bronfman family, Rupert Murdoch became a force unto himself. And now he, through his Weekly Standard magazine, a neoconservative journal, through his ownership of the New York Post, and needless to say, through his control of Fox News and other related entities, he has become a major player in Republican and Democratic politics in America. And now Sarah Palin is part of his stable of shills, of people who carry out his agenda. Sarah Palin, you see, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't come from the grassroots. She comes as a creation of the highest levels of the international media elite and those powerful financial interests that control the media. Sarah Palin, folks, there's much more to her than meets the eye. This special report on Sarah Palin, the power behind Sarah Palin, goes into not just these details that I've mentioned, but much, much more. And once you see this, you'll understand why both the conservative critics, or the conservative supporters of Sarah Palin, and her liberal critics don't really understand the big picture. And if they do understand the big picture, and they're not reporting what's been reported in this special report that I prepared for American Free Press, you can then understand that these so-called journalists are actually part of the problem. They're not telling you what you need to know. So I invite you to get a copy of our special report on Sarah Palin. You can call American Free Press at 1-888-699-NEWS. That's 1-888-699-NEWS. Or you can go to the American Free Press website at americanfreepress.net and get further information about our weekly newspaper. But please, do what you can to spread the word about this special report. I don't make a penny off of it, folks. I want you to know that right now. I don't make a penny off this report, but I want you to spread this video around and get copies of this report and let people know the truth about Sarah Palin, not the silly rhetoric, not the silly critical rhetoric that we hear about her hairdo and about what she really does in her private life. And, you know, we're talking real power politics that affect the course of America's future and the course of the world. So don't be fooled by the silly liberals and by the Palin-worshipping conservatives. Get some real hardcore facts. I invite you to do that, folks. It's important for your future, for your children's future, for America's future. Let's face it, for the world's future. So let's get the word out about Sarah Palin, who she is, what she's really all about, and who these big financial interests are that are propping up her personal fortune and her political aspirations. Thank you very much. This has been Michael Collins Piper coming to you from Washington, D.C.